Christian parenting. So, you're having a baby. You lose your cool too much. Your kids watch too much screen time. You don't work with your kids enough on their schoolwork. Your baby isn't hitting milestones and it's your fault. You work too much. You don't play with your kids enough. You're too controlling. You should really be more patient. Your need to take alone time is so selfish. You shouldn't let your baby cry like that. Being a mom should be enough for you. You don't need to be anything else. Today on So You're Having a Baby, we are talking about the elephant in the room, mommy guilt. And I have the distinct honor of being joined by licensed professional therapist Morgan Myers. She lives in Dallas, Texas, and works with postpartum moms and mothers coming in for counseling because they're burned out, frustrated, or stuck in life. She founded Motherlift when she saw a need for drastically more support for moms. She wants to be a voice of wisdom and peace for moms as they move through all the identity shifts of motherhood. She's been married for 10 years to a priest in the Anglican Church. She also has 2 wild girls, Eleanor and Rowan. In her free time, she likes to garden, do creative projects, and work with her hands. This episode goes deep. This episode might be slightly triggering. It was for me, to be honest. We really open up and get vulnerable in this episode, and I hope that you will come along on the journey and go deep yourself, and I hope it's really encouraging to you and meets you right where you're at. Let's jump right in. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today. I would love it if you would maybe start us off by telling us a little bit about your work with Motherlift.
Yeah, so I started Motherlift about a year and a half ago with my 2 sisters. I'm the middle of the sisters, and we all 3 kind of had some unexpected / traumatic events when we were pregnant and had our babies. We have 7 collectively now.
Oh my word.
So, but we were just talking about how we've, tried to do a lot of self-exploration and, therapy and all of that, but we still felt like there was a big gap in what we needed after having, while pregnant and after having our kids. So we decided to kind of start this little project that is educational, it's support, it's supposed to be funny sometimes.
I think it's great.
Yeah. And so my older sister is the designer and I'm the therapist part of the team. And then my younger sister is a doula in Austin. And so she brings in more of that kind of physical health piece of the puzzle. So we do workshops and try to help moms not feel so isolated and at a loss.
I loved when y'all started it. I remember looking at these, I think Macy made them, who's the doula, and it was like things you need for your nightstand after having the baby, things you need to take in your hospital bag, very practical, really helpful tips that I'm like, dang, I wish I would have had this when I was pregnant.
I know. I wish I had known about doulas. How did I not know? There's so much that we don't know when we have kids.
It really is true. Yeah. And it's such a good advocate for you. I just look back on my experience. Oh my gosh. My birth with Wesley was, like you're saying, traumatic. It was so crazy. And I'm like, my goodness, no one was there to advocate for me except for Craig. Neither of us have any idea what's going on. I mean, literally, Wesley was crowning and my doctor was at a party having a slice of cake. And they're like, just hold him in. We're going to put a blanket over you.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like if I had a doula, she'd be like, get her butt in here now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, that's a good metaphor for the whole thing. It's like, I'm in pain. I'm in horrible pain. And everyone's at
something
a party.
Is off. Yeah. And she's eating cake.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, that's awesome. I love what y'all are doing. I feel like I'm y'all's biggest fan. And so if you are listening and you don't follow Motherlift yet on Instagram, especially, go check them out. They are amazing. They're doing amazing work. And one of the things I feel like that they do really well is address mommy guilt, which, as we've said in the intro, it's something that we all deal with. We all struggle with this. And Morgan is a licensed therapist, and she's amazing. And so I would just think that her perspective on all of this is going to be really helpful for all of us. So Morgan, I would love if you would explain mommy guilt. What is it? What does it sound like? Where does it come from?
Oh, it's so real. I think we all experience it. Even moms with adult children, it's like it just kind of permeates forever. But yeah, so I'm sure that most moms know this experience, but it's just this heavy, kind of uneasy, it's a lot of self-doubt. It's like mixed with regret, but I can't figure out what I regret doing. Just this overall, like, I've messed up. And my actions are directly like tied to damaging my kids or causing a wound or causing a problem that might mess my kids up or mess my family up. It's heavy and awful, and it's really hard to jump out of it when you're in that mode as a mom.
Where do you feel like it stems from, like even psychologically?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it all goes back to, I think guilt is probably the wrong word technically. I think it's shame, because guilt is related to a mistake you've made. And shame is this idea that you are not enough overall. So it's like this wet blanket that we kind of carry around as part of our identity almost. So yeah, I think it stems from this idea that there's a standard out there that we haven't met. And healthy, ideal people, which I am not one of, can have like an internal standard that feels authentic and kind of centered. But most of us, I think, assume that there's an external standard that we have to meet, and that everyone else seems to have it together and we don't. So like, we just had Easter and I was feeling good about myself. We had a fun time and we did our whole Easter egg hunt and everything. And then immediately, I was on Instagram and I was like, oh, I didn't brush my kid's hair. Like, like I didn't wear a matching outfit with my child or whatever. I was looking on Instagram and then I felt like crap after looking, so I think the comparison thing, thinking, okay, all these people know like what's the most, what's the best thing to do, or they seem to make good decisions and I seem to not know, or I'm messing up. It
can be so damaging, the comparison game, especially, and this is not to rag on influencers or anything, but everything is perfectly curated that they show us, that they give us from their life, with babies, with toddlers. And I think any mom knows that is not reality, but still we feel like crap about it, when our lives, like you said, when our kids aren't in perfectly smocked outfits and we don't have this magical Easter basket for them to carry around and we don't have our DSLR photographs of, or slow-mo videos. And it's like, that's just not real life. But we're constantly submitting to this unrealistic, almost like fairy tale standard that can be just so damaging for our self-esteem, for our mental psyche, for our hearts. Yeah. I wonder what that looks like going forward for us.
Yeah, I think even without social media, we would be doing that because we're trying, it's based in our like insecurity or lack of like confidence in what we can accomplish, like our own judgment and trusting our gut. And so, yeah, I think, we're going to get into like addressing and how to kind of help you get out of that guilt place. But it starts from like deciding to trust that your judgment is the best for your family, and for your kids, and getting in. A lot of my clients, we talk about getting in touch with that inner voice. Like all these other voices are so loud in our lives, and getting in touch with that voice and knowing and trusting that voice as a mom.
It's interesting because even you saying that, I hadn't even really thought about that. It's funny. I will sit and talk with my therapist and she's so real and she's so good for me. And she's always like, hey, why are you doubting yourself? Like, why do you doubt your own judgment? Why do you need everyone else's opinion on your decision or on what you want, even what you feel like is best for your kids, how you should discipline your kids, what kind of school you should put your kids in. I mean, all the things. It's like, it's funny because I realized that I really had almost lost this ability to trust my own judgment. And I feel like it stems back very, very deep in my life as we've been working through things, which is really tough when you realize that. And so just kind of like working to a place of healing in all of it. But I think that there's something to that, learning to trust that, like, hey, God gave me these kids. He didn't give me anybody else's kids. He gave me these kids. These kids are no one else's kids but mine. And he did that for a reason. Like, he doesn't make mistakes. Like, so God, like, teach me how to learn to, like, trust my own judgment in these things and trust my gut. Your mom gut is so strong. Like, the mom intuition is so strong and usually always so spot on. And we don't need the peanut gallery, like you're saying. We don't need all the voices, and learning to, like, silence those. Yeah. Is huge.
Yeah. One thing that I say to myself a lot and to my clients too is, like, your kids need you to be you. Like, they don't need you to be perfect Instagram influencer mom. Like, they need Wes and Wells need you, you know, and my kids need me to be me, flaws and all, you know. And one thing I've thought about lately is, like, they definitely don't need to see you be perfect either. You know, I think that kind of leads to perfectionism for them later. If all they see if all they see is a shiny, polished mom, you know, that's what you're modeling. So they need to see the flawed mom who, you know, makes amends after making a mistake and who humbles herself when she's
really good at apologizing.
Yes.
I actually gave, we're doing like a Christian parenting digital event, and I gave my talk on perfectionism. And I was I was trying to, like, figure out, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this intense pressure to, like, get it all right? And I do think it comes from a good place in my heart most of the time. Like, I do feel like at the core of where it stems from is because I think this is the most important thing I'll ever do. Is raise these kids. And it's like the highest honor of my life is to, like, mold and shape and foster a safe environment for these munchkins to like thrive and grow. And I think I am putting that pressure on myself even and this desire to get it all right for them.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It is the most important job we have as moms and as women. And yeah, I just think we overachieve maybe, or I don't know. We take it too far. And I think we assume we have more control over the outcomes.
That's for sure.
Yes.
My control issues are intense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get, like, personal with this whole issue, this whole idea of mommy guilt, mommy shame. I really like actually renaming it to mommy shame. How, Morgan, like, as much as you feel comfortable, do you personally struggle from it? And where do you think it stems from for you?
Yeah. I immediately think of my older daughter who's in a private school, and how much I have a lot of guilt with just being disorganized, and her, you know, like, we forgot to have her practice her poem that she has to recite, and feeling very guilty that she shows up to school. Now she's stressed out because we didn't give her enough time. And a lot of that goes back to my childhood. Like, I remember, it's weird how vividly it reminds me of, like, I forgot my homework, or, you know, and being constantly in trouble for that, and not wanting to repeat that pattern. That's a lot of it. And that's tough to get out of. I did hear, I'll go back to my personal stuff in a sec, but I heard a really good little trick to get you out of that. It's an ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy little trick, but you distill the thing down to one word. So the thing you feel guilty about. So for her, for this situation, maybe it's poem. So you say the word 30 times in 30 seconds. And it's kind of, you know, it feels silly at first, but I'll say it out loud in my car alone, not in front of people. And I go through poem over and over. And for some reason, I mean, ACT is about kind of distancing yourself from that emotion. So kind of like pulling it out from within and almost reflecting on it as a separate sensation or something. And by the end of that 30 seconds, it feels like you can actually kind of tease it out rather than it feeling like this active trigger inside. Right. And sometimes that can release it on its own when I know. The
constant loop. That just kinda,
Yeah. When I know there's not really a solution, a lot of the guilt stuff we have, it's not like there's an action step you need to take. It's just this kind of like yucky feeling inside.
It's like it already happened. So there's, and you apologized or, whatever it may be.
It's over now and you just can't seem to let it go.
Yes.
But another one that came to mind personally is a couple years ago. I'm very laid back. I'm kind of hands off with my kids. I try to let them discover and explore things. And we were at a restaurant and it was outdoor, a patio, and they were kind of playing around the table, not sitting in their chair, but nearby. And I was in deep conversation. And then one of the waitresses walked out with Rowan, my 3-year-old at the time. And she was in their kitchen, in the restaurant's kitchen.
Rowan.
Oh my gosh.
I love her.
It's funny now, but I spiraled. I was like,
you were horrified.
Oh yeah. And then a friend made a joke about it and she really, it was in good fun, but I just internalized it and I felt horrible. And
sure.
And reflecting on it, when I was thinking about this conversation, I was like, it makes me feel ashamed of a quality about myself that I'm actually proud of. And I think is a gift most of the time. Right. My ability to let them kind of be who they are and not feel afraid all the time. This was also a good one to think about because I did sort of make a mistake. I did need to reflect on, okay, what mistake did I make in that situation? I did need to be more aware of where she was. Sure. Like that could have been dangerous. That's not good. But now, it's been a year and a half. I could tease out those things, but in the moment I couldn't.
Yeah, no.
I felt like I'm a horrible person. Too, I'm a horrible person. I should have never even gone to this restaurant, just making these huge assumptions about the whole situation.
Yeah. It's interesting even within that I think this is just in human nature, but how much we hate making mistakes and how hard it is to move on after we make them. I know that, I've struggled with perfectionism my entire life. So I have shame that I remember that feeling like even as a child when I would make mistakes, the shame cycle that I would just spiral and I literally could not break out of it and still deal with it now as an adult woman, and still hate apologizing and hate acknowledging that I did anything wrong. It's still such a big struggle for me and something I've been working through so much and realized how much of it is perfectionism because I'm literally surprised when I do something wrong because I think most of the time in my head I do most things right. And I think a lot of people struggle with that of I feel like I'm right most of the time and I make the right decisions most of the time. And so when I do say something I shouldn't have said to somebody, just even if it was joking or, I probably would have been that friend that made a joke about it and was like, oh God, why did I say that? And then I would be laying in bed at night, literally playing it over and over and over in my head, unable to sleep, And I realized gosh, I really hold these very unfair expectations on myself, this unfair pressure that is not even human. And that when I do that, I'm denying my humanness. I'm denying my own emotional health, my own mental health, because that inner critic is just berating me, over how could you have said that to her? How could you have treated your son that way? Or how could you have blown up on him? He was just trying to be close to you, but it's the shame cycle that doesn't stop when it's okay, yeah, I screwed up. I humbly and really intentionally and authentically apologize. It's it doesn't stop there for me.
Yeah. And that's a practice. It sounds like you've worked on humbling yourself and forcing, yourself to go and get forgiveness, but then you can't forgive yourself.
I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still something that's real intense.
I think that right there, and whether you are a perfectionist or you're a chaos person like me, or you're just like, whatever, I'll just, let the chips fall where they may. That is a practice we all have to do. Yeah. And I think that goes to our sense of identity and feeling worthy of that forgiveness and letting, like, showing yourself grace and choosing to open your hands to someone else's grace that they're giving you.
Can I throw an audible right now? I have a question. Yeah. It's funny that I would be a Christian. I would be in the Christian space. I am a speaker, a writer in this space, worship leader. And yet somewhere along the way, I have believed this lie that I'm unworthy, like you're saying, of forgiveness, of whatever it may be, you know. I would say it started at child, but I think it got deeply ingrained, maybe even within church. And so I'd love if you could maybe address that a little bit, like maybe how these little lies get spoken. I'm sure there's so many other Christian women listening that, like, I still believe unworthy of, like, forgiveness, you know, because we talk about all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, but it's like somehow, but God still chooses us. God still forgives us. We still have this, you know, this theology around forgiveness that even though we're unworthy, God loves us. And I'm just curious if you could speak to maybe how that affects us, like that theology, that way of thinking.
Yeah, I think I totally relate. And I was just in my own therapy this week talking about this because we take that message in, whether it was explicit or implicit as kids or, you know, young adults. I'm thinking of, you know, the verse, like, I'll spit you out of my mouth, like, you know, and thinking that's me. Like, not that's someone over here who's living a lifestyle that's different than me. I mean, kind of personalizing it to you. And we can't stop there. Like, we have to, it's like stopping on Saturday for Easter. Like, you have to go to Sunday and see the redemption. And I think that can become so damaging and cuts you off at the knees as a woman, as a mom, as a human.
Yeah, because we've somewhere along the way, even though we believe that, like, God is a God full of grace and love, it's like that if we don't walk the straight and narrow perfectly, we're not worthy of that love and grace. But God, like, calls us worthy, you know, like, and he sees it all, but he still chooses us. And he, you know, I think of that hymn, Just As I Am, that coming before God just as I am. And that's exactly what he wants and exactly what he's asking. He's not asking us to clean ourselves up before we come to him or be polished and perfect, you know, and we're forsaking that grace of God when we take on perfectionism. And we're saying, like, oh, I actually don't need it. Thank you, though. Thank you for the offer. I'm just going to continue in my illusion of perfection and deny your humanness and your need for the grace and power of God in your life and in your parenting.
Yeah, I think about, recently I was thinking about this. In the mornings, my girls will come in, we're dead asleep, and they'll both, like, jump on top of us. You know, everybody experiences that. And I'm like, this is coming into the throne room. Like, they have no doubt in their mind that we would love them in that moment, even though I'm like, get back to bed, you know, get off. Like, get off. Yeah. But, like, and I think that's the spirit that we hope to get to as Christians, is, like, to walk boldly into that room and know that you'll be welcomed. But I think there's a lot of healing we have to do, you know. And some of us, you know, if God or your image of God is that kind of rigid, harsh father or whatever, it may have to start with us. You know, it might have to start with you internally saying, no, I am worthy. I'm working through what I feel with God, but I'm going to choose to believe I'm worthy. And then that piece will fall into place.
Okay, Morgan, so practically speaking, how do we step out of this mommy shame? How do we cope with it? How do we silence it going forward?
Yeah, so this is tough because it can be very triggering. Like I said, you know, you can it's hard to tease it out. But I wanted to try something with you, if you want to do it with me.
Okay. makes me nervous.
So tell me about an experience maybe recently when you felt this mom guilt thing.
Ugh. Okay. So we have been having like a lot of behavior issues with Wesley. You know, I think that he is a highly sensitive person. I think he's an HSP. So he feels very intensely. And I think he's been really struggling with how to cope with his feelings. And this was one of his his very worst meltdowns that I've ever seen. And I will say I did feel a lot of shame around just seeing that happen in general, like that I couldn't control it. Yeah. Our nanny was there. I was so embarrassed because the way he was speaking to her, the way he was speaking to me, he was like kicking the walls. I mean, I'd never seen Wesley this way, because Wesley overall is very type B, very peaceful, relaxed person, very loving, very affectionate. And so it was very out of character for him, but he was having a major meltdown. Yeah. And I was really struggling to, I don't know, like diffuse the situation and without trying to like wrestle it to the ground and take control of it, you know? Yeah. And I think that my first instinct is always like the fight instinct, not flight. And I'm like, you sit down right now, and you know, scolding him and trying to get him to listen. And he's like, no, I'm not listening to you. Never. He pulls out these like really funny sayings when he does it. And it's really hard not to like laugh, because he'll be like, not on my watch. It's just because he just gets stuff from the shows he watches, you know, and he's got all these like sayings.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I'm like trying to diffuse this situation. He's upset because we told him, no, he can't go get Slurpees with his friend at the park. And just because we just hadn't planned for it. Anyway, so I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I don't know how to help him. I have all these like scripts going in my head of like, don't leave him alone. Like sit with him in his frustration and just all the things that I should be doing that were not my natural instinct. My natural instinct is to yell and try to overpower his yelling with mine and force him to like sit down, force him to stay in his room. And he was like trying to get out of his room. And it was just one of the biggest, worst blow-ups. I would say it is the worst one we've ever had. Oh my goodness. And I put him in his room and closed the door and walked into my room and just started sobbing. Like sobbing. And luckily I had a therapy session literally right after that, like a digital one. And got on the call, and Jenny's like, how are you? And I'm like, like start just bawling. And I was like, I'm at the end of my rope. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing in this situation with him. Like, I feel like a horrible mom. I'm not a gentle mom. I'm not a quiet mom that has all these little tricks to like calm him down. And like, as much as I try to do these things that we've talked about, like I just always default to trying to like overpower him. Yeah. And carry so much shame over, you know, what is he going to say 20 years down the road in his therapy session when they ask like what his mom was like. And he's going to be like, she was crazy. She yelled at me. She pulled my arm and made me sit down, and, you know, all those things. Like I play this like shame loop in my head about that I wasn't this like perfectly gentle, quiet, reserved mom. Yeah.
So a lot of feeling like you're falling short over and over in all the different ways.
Just cannot get it together. Like what is wrong with you? Yeah. Yeah. Like you're a grown woman and he's 4 years old.
Yeah. It is so hard to parent, because it's like, I picture like a volleyball, like their emotions, they throw it to us, and then we add our emotions and we throw it to them, and then they add their, and it snowballs, and it's so hard to get your bearings in a situation like that. So these are the questions that I ask myself and my clients. So what did you feel like in that moment you were most afraid of?
I feel like in that moment, it really did not help that my nanny was there. And I felt so embarrassed. Like she's going to think that I can't control my kid. You know, she's from the Latin culture, and it's just really different. And I thought, gosh, I just look like I'm just getting walked all over by this kid.
So kind of fear of her judgment and fear of her thinking you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And just like, how can you let him talk to you that way? How can you let him talk to me that way? Yeah. Because we don't really spank. which is just a decision we've made. I know that everyone to each their own in that arena, but it doesn't work well, especially with Wes. And so I kind of just felt the whole situation was out of my control, and when it should be in my control because I'm the grown-up.
Yeah. So every time I hear that word should, I think of, okay, that's another time where you feel like there's someone out there saying you're supposed to be doing these things and you're not doing them, in a very judgy kind of critical way. Yeah. So how do you feel? And if you were my client right now, we'd be going a lot slower and I'd want to know more, but I'm not going to go there. How do you feel like you were falling short? In that moment?
So I feel it. I feel like I have these two voices in my head. I have like the traditional parent, like the boomer generation parent who's like, you spank that baby and you put him in his room and you tell, the authoritative compliance-based discipline. And I have that. So I have that person in my head. And then I also have this new age mom, that's very zen and like, honestly, she's probably a therapist. She knows about all the things that, all the ways this could be damaging in the future for my child, and she's totally in my head. So I feel like I can be a mix of those two people and I need to be, because it feels like both kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I constantly feel like I'm not doing what either of them would want me to do.
Yeah. What does your voice sound like? If there's like the dominating kind of authoritative parent, and then there's the zen, like chill out and like everybody be gentle and patient. What is your voice like on a good day? What does Rachel, the parent, sound like or look like? I
feel like she's a mix of the two, of her favorite qualities of both. Like she doesn't let the kid run the ship, but she's going to sit on the floor with the kid and work through his emotions with him and ask him how he's feeling and help him process more, because I feel like that's something that I really admire, is this ability to kind of help your kid work through what they're feeling and process it and not take it personally. Because my issue is I begin to take it all personally, like, and be offended by my child almost. Yeah. And so maybe this like unoffendable kind of like, you're just in your own emotional bubble and it doesn't affect me. Like I don't get on the roller coaster. That would be like my ideal. And on a good day, I am able to do that. But and more of a fun mom that's like redirecting where they're feeling to just making them laugh and have fun in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty healthy version. And flexible and able to meet him where he's at depending on the day. Yeah. So now that I can tell you're kind of like not as emotional, you're more in like that, reflective mode. And we can practice this at home. You can do this next time. When you think back on that day, what mistake do you feel like you made? Or another way to ask it is, if I could do it again, what would I do different?
Yeah, well, it makes me want to cry. Just because I look back on it and I just feel like I just wasn't patient. Like I let, all the voices get in my head, and I let just kind of like what my nanny would think cloud how I treated him. And so I think I would go back and I would just sit with him right away, instead of trying to discipline him right away. Because I think, what's funny about that story is after therapy, me and Jenny were talking and she was like, that sounds really out of character for him. I would ask his teachers if something happened. And he had like been planning all day to go out with his friend. Him and his friend had talked about it all day together. And we're telling everybody, we're going to go do this after school. We're going to go do this. And the teachers, they were like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened, because we kept trying to warn them, like, hey, if you don't talk to your mom first, just don't get your hopes up too much. Like they kept trying to like level them out, because they can both, when they get together, just like amp each other up. Yeah. And they, she's like, I totally can see that's why that happened, because, he had he thought it was like the plan, he thought he would come home and they would be doing that. Yeah. But I didn't know any of that. So I just didn't even ask. Like I didn't really inquire. I didn't step back. I just was like, whoa, this is too much. Because it basically, I was like working and he came in and was just already pissed off. Like he was already ready to fight about it.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, let's fight, instead of being like, whoa. Like, let's talk about this, and that I think going into it next time would just be like, what's up, bud?
Yeah.
First and foremost, rather than like needing to control his really bad behavior right out the gate.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of wishing that you had just slowed down enough to like, okay, why would this be such a huge deal right now? Like, and not reacting, kind of slowing down enough to respond. Yeah. Which, think about like how giant your shame was and how like basically tiny that mistake was. You just didn't give enough, you didn't give that 30 seconds of like,
Yeah.
And then that little mistake, it didn't cause this. He may have still had a meltdown, even if, you had reflected. But it's, I think the shame just makes it, I think you were almost about to go there where you were like, I cared more about my nanny and I care, you're about to go there in that shame thing when I think if we can just practice bringing it back down to what was the behavior that I did that I wish I hadn't done.
Good.
Like me at the restaurant. Okay. The one thing I could have done is I could have turned my head and looked where Rowan was going. Like, it's not, I wish I wasn't such a horrible person. And because
I did go there. I was like, he's going to hate me. He's going to resent me growing up. He's going to tell all these people that I was psychotic. Like,
Yeah. And it's okay to get spirally, as I call it. Because how can we not? I mean, we're going to like some really deep stuff from our past, from our own identity. Like that makes sense. But to parent out of that shame is just going to leave you like burnout and frustrated and sad and beat up and all that,
So it's like taking the shame and comparing it to what actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, once you make the amends, so like for example, if you felt like you needed to, you could go and say, hey, to Wes, like, I wish I had stopped enough and asked you, because that might have changed my, just explain to him. And then after that, it is your job to forgive yourself. Yeah. Like, and to just put a line and say, I've forgiven myself for that. Yeah. You can try that little...
I can learn from this. Like, this is not... I think partially I get futuristic and I'm like, it's always going to be this way. Yeah. This will always be something I struggle with. And it's like, no, that's not even logical.
No. Yeah. That's projection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And to let it be part of your story, like you carry this with you the next time. Like you will not forget that this just happened. Yeah. Like, that's a pretty striking moment for you as a mom. So
and it really has stuck with me. Okay. Can you just read off basically those questions again, if anybody's like even taking notes?
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes I start with a mistake question, but this time I started with, what were you afraid of in the situation? Because when we're triggered, it's a fear response. So we're afraid of something. How do I feel I am falling short in this situation? And then, did I make a mistake? So, and then beyond that, sometimes you haven't made a mistake. So you just have to release yourself and your shame. And you can practice that 30 times in 30 seconds. So I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. And release that,
I will definitely be doing that in private. Later today.
Yeah, later. Yeah.
I'm going to do it right now on the podcast.
Everyone, wait a minute. Okay.
No, it's so good. I really appreciate that. Maybe as we begin to wrap up, what encouragement would you have for a mom who deals with mommy shame?
Yeah, I think the thing I said earlier, your kids need you to be you. Yeah. They need you to be flawed and imperfect, and they need to see you repair when you've made a mistake. Right. That's a big part of modeling. And that will help them not have shame in the future, So if you are a new mom, or if you're dealing with some really practical stuff like sleep training, or when to take your child to the doctor, or that kind of thing, I think it's always important to appeal to an expert, so like you were talking about not always running to everyone else for like their input. But the exception to that is experts. I mean, you can trust their opinion, and then you take that in and you add it to your intuition, and that's how you kind of make a decision. So we had one person on our Instagram thing ask about sleep training and feeling bad about letting them cry it out. And the mom said it was very hard for her it's hard for her to keep rocking the baby to sleep. She's sick of it. I think, I can't remember how she said it, but so it sounds like her intuition is kind of saying it's time. Like, but if you're unsure, I think, calling a sleep expert, calling your pediatrician.
Even I remember with Wells, I had a lot of issues with him with sleep, with cried out. He was up like 6 times in the night. It was miserable. And I remember going to the pediatrician. It was like his 6-month, I think, maybe checkup, maybe 4-month. I think it was 6-month. And they're asking about sleep, and I'm like, I'm very tired. We're up all night because I'm trying to keep him from waking up Wesley and messing up Wesley's sleep. And I'm drowning in it all. And they're like, Mama, it's time. And
you needed that little push, I bet.
They're like, he's big and chunky and healthy. And if Mama's not happy and healthy and thriving, nobody else is going to be either. What would you say maybe to the mom who had a set of expectations for herself and how it would go? Maybe birth plan. Maybe it's she's not producing enough milk. Maybe her body's not snapping back the way that she feels like it should, or everyone is telling her it should.
Yeah, that is so hard, especially as a new mom, because we haven't maybe ever had to let go of so much control in our lives,
That's true.
I think we have to release that, and I like to do the bullseye about control, which you can try at home if you want. It's like a target sign. So it's, or a donut. I like to think of it as a donut.
I like donuts.
Small circle and then a big circle. And in the small circle, you say, what can I control? So like, worked with clients with milk supply problems. Can they control that? What parts of that can they control? They can hydrate, they can, do the pumping or whatever, but there's so much of that they can't control. Can they control if the milk actually comes in, and those things you can't control, finding ways to release that, sometimes it's in prayer, sometimes it's, talking about it with someone and feeling normal and feeling normalized.
Talking to an expert about it. That's like, hey, it's time to move on. That's another thing. We had Dr. Hillary Lewis on last season, and she was like, it all comes down to like, if you are a mess over, I know with Wells, Wells was kind of like my more difficult baby. Like he was done nursing at 6 months. He's like, no. And Wesley, I nursed for a full year and felt like that was what I was supposed to do and should do. And she was like, no, formula is totally fine. It's good for the baby. The baby will be healthy. He's going to be a beast. He's going to be so chunky. And he was, and that was a really hard thing for me to release, but she really helped me do that in a very like healthy, powerful way for me to like be guilt-free.
And I think it's like, all of motherhood up until they leave the house or maybe even beyond, it's like practicing like, okay, I'm kind of like sort of steering this ship, but there's a lot of other things coming into play, and the thing could turn at any point and you have to recalibrate. And I think practicing over and over, like, I'm not going to take that on as my fault. I'm not going to take that on as I did this. Like there's a lot of things at play,
Okay. Well, going forward, do you have any practical advice beyond obviously what we've talked about? We've given lots of practicals, I feel like, in this episode, but just any last practical advice you'd give the mom listening that wants freedom from it?
Yeah. The one other thing I thought of is getting clear about your values, which I talk about all the time. People are probably sick of hearing about it, but, you and your husband, clarifying what's most important to you in your life. And these are more the broad categories. So like for us at our house, it's peace and creativity, beauty, adventure. And whenever you can get clear about those, and if anybody's interested, I can share my list of values. you can really make decisions a lot easier, you know. And on Instagram, a couple of people sent in like, I feel guilty when I leave for the weekend, or I feel guilty for date night, or anytime I'm alone, I feel guilty. Like somebody said that. And if you can, you know, it's almost like reminding your brain, like, I'm doing this because I believe in strengthening my marriage, or I'm doing this because I need peace, and I get peace from being alone, you know.
And it makes me a better mom.
And it makes, and my kids need, and reminding yourself that your kids need to see you go away and come back, and your kids need to see you take up space.
Yeah. And choose things for yourself.
Yeah. But I think, that kind of solves a lot of that. A lot of my mom guilt that comes up, I can process by using my values. You know,
like, actually, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
That's not important to me, actually.
Yeah.
One
thing I thought of is like, my house can be very messy and beat up and stuff. And I'm like, that's my creativity value coming out. Like, I wish my house was more organized, but my kids get the paints out all the time, for better or worse, and do stuff at the table, you know? So I feel guilty sometimes seeing other people's homes, but if I can come back to like, no, this is my value, and my kids need to see that. And anyway, that's
Brittany Bergman, who we had on a few episodes ago, said something about like, those are just signs of life. If you like can kind of reframe, like, my house is not spotless, my meals are not perfect, my whatever it may be, my kids are scruffy. They have food all over their face all the time. It's like signs of life.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Little signs of life in your home. Awesome. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been,
it was fun.
Honestly, really impactful for me, and really good for me. And I know it will be for everyone listening.
Good. Great.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that it was encouraging for you, and practical for you, and equipping for you to step out of mommy shame and mommy guilt whenever it comes your way. If you're interested in more of what Morgan and her sisters are doing at Motherlift, you can always go to @Motherlift on Instagram and check them out, follow along, and go to their website, motherlift.com, for their blog, for printables, and all kinds of different resources for new moms. It's a great place to check out to learn more. You can always go to our website, christianparenting.org, to find our book, A Parent's Guide to a New Baby, if you're hoping to just go deeper in this season with your spouse, because we know that parenting a newborn is real hard, but we are here to help.